Welcome to Eyes on the Grid, where we talk about all things F1. I'm Alexa.
And I'm Sarah.
Today we're going to talk about the Dutch GP.
It's lights out and away we go!
Okay, so if you haven't noticed, Mallory's not here today. She is celebrating her birthday, so she will be in the next one, I hope. I think. I'm not sure. But she did give us her predictions, and we'll talk about it soon. So I think we need to start, obviously, with free practice, because, oh my gosh, what a start to the second season. Or the second
half of the season, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes, it was so eventful, I guess. I mean, I don't even know where to start, to be honest, because we knew it was going to rain, but I wasn't expecting so much to happen, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I personally was at work, so I could not watch it live, but I got a kind of play-by-play from you, and then I watched it again at home, but it sounded very exciting in the live moment.
I mean, it was at, 6 a.m.? I was so tired. But I was there, I watched it. The one thing, okay, here's the thing. Obviously, we had the summer break and everyone did their thing, whatever. But then the comments from the commentators annoyed me so much. Specifically, Naomi, her comment, they were talking about Carlos's decision for Williams. And she was just like, what did she say? Oh, Carlos chose Williams because he was running out of options. And Mercedes was wanted Kimi Antonelli. And I was like, that was not, I don't think.
Yeah, I didn't expect that from Naomi. She tends to be someone who's neutral or will give you good points for both sides, but I wasn't expecting to hear that from her.
Yeah. I mean, she favors Max a lot. I've seen her favor Max. And I was surprised because she did an interview with Carlos and she was like, oh, I'm so excited to hear what you were doing. And then for her to say that afterwards, it's just like, okay, so you didn't like his decision? Where did you want him to go?
I mean, there weren't a lot of options.
Oh, even Martin, he was like, it's not like he had the best options. All the other options were the lowest on the grid. He even said that, and I was like, ooh, that's a little sad. But
the truth, just slightly, it is the truth. It is the truth.
It's true. It's just the way that he said it was just like, okay, he's adding salt to the wound kind of thing. I don't know. Free practice 1, it was mostly rainy and windy, and I wasn't expecting it to be as windy as it was.
Yeah, I don't remember.
There's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think they were almost all on intermediates, right? There were some that were on wets by the end.
So no, a lot of them started with wets, and then the first person to get on intermediates was Max, and it was almost halfway through practice, because it stopped raining at least a little bit, and then the track was drying up. But I don't know. It wasn't as eventful. Free practice 1 wasn't as eventful for me, at least because there was no action. The only big thing that happened was a lot of the drivers were locking up and having brake issues, which I understand because they're coming back from break and they haven't been driving the car, so they have to get used to it again. I think, at least, or the tires needed to warm up. But I think that was the biggest thing that happened for free practice 1. Oh, a lot of the commentators were talking about Oscar's ribs, and I get it. A lot of people didn't know that he broke his ribs, and he's not somebody who's gonna announce it. But why would you announce it during summer break?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It was just during in his post, right? It was in one of his.
Yeah, it was a post or a picture, and that was it. But I feel like that was. I love Oscar. He's great, but I feel like that was more of a see what I did for my win kind of thing, or
Yeah.
like it was deserved or
Right.
something like that. Because it did feel like when he was winning, everyone was like, why are they giving the spot back? And maybe they knew all about the rib and we just didn't. So I don't know. That's just me.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, first of all, he dropped it so casually that he had a broken rib, like in a picture form. I had no idea because over the radio, he sounded so calm and like collected.
Yeah. Well, he didn't even
Yeah.
talk a lot. He didn't talk a lot, which makes sense now.
It does.
That's why I said like free practice one wasn't as eventful, because it was just everyone was locking up. That's it. Like, and maybe because it was like 6 in the morning and I wasn't really paying attention, but that's all I saw.
We need to then also just touch on Logan and his speeding in the pits with his 100
Oh, right. I forgot.
pound fine that he got.
I'm sorry, but that's hilarious. Like, I would have just given him a reprimand. Like, why take 100 euros or 100 pounds? Like, yeah, compared to how much they get paid, 100 is nothing. And maybe he was speeding. I don't know. I don't know what time he was speeding or whatever, or who even noted that, because it had to go to the store somehow. But like, it was not worth it.
No, it definitely was not, especially because other drivers who speeded, I don't even think they either get a bigger fine or they just get like a warning or something, like a don't do it again.
But I will say free practice 2 was way more eventful than the first one. I think now everyone got their footing back. They like can feel what they need to do, all that kind of stuff. So it was a lot easier, and there wasn't as many lockups. But the ones that had like main issues were Checo and Leclerc. They were both having issues, but the biggest one was Hulkenberg, because he was having issues from the beginning, from the pre-practice one, and supposedly they fixed it, and it's still having issues later. So I don't know what they did, but it wasn't working.
Yeah, and we also had 2 unsafe releases, one being Joe and one being Ricardo, and Joe got a fine for that as well, which was 5,000 euros.
And then the second one was Alex and Lance, and that one went to Alex. But really, it wasn't even to the drivers. So it was more like Williams and
the teams themselves. Yeah.
Stake have to pay for it. So, yeah, so that I think that was okay. But I'm not gonna lie, we're gonna talk about it. But Williams had a very bad weekend. He's starting with Logan, then his like $100 fine or £100 fine. Then you have Alex's $5,000 fine. But yeah, those two had to pay a fine. But yeah, Williams, it was not their weekend. We'll get to that.
Carlos also.
Carlos with his gearbox.
Had that happen. So there was quite, like you said, quite eventful in FP2, and that wasn't even like the biggest thing to happen.
It wasn't even the race. No, okay. But the thing about Carlos, I was watching P1 with Maddie and Tommy, and they were saying how every time somebody announces their like driver's seat, the race after, there's always an issue.
Oh.
So I was like, oh, maybe they're onto something. So now I'm gonna watch out for that. Like if the other drivers announce it, and see if they have like issues afterwards. That's like something to watch out for sure.
That's like a trend.
I feel bad for him because it happened like right at the beginning of free practice 2, so he missed all of it. And then a lot of them were just working on long runs, which I think was worth it at that time. And I know they usually do during free practice 2 because no one really cares about free practice 3. Don't know why they have it, but I guess it's helpful for testing other things out that they notice. But yeah, most of free practice 2 is for long runs, in my opinion. So during the long runs, there was a red flag. I do remember there was a red flag, and it was Hulkenberg because he went off on turn 1 and he hit the barrier. Because he locked up, which is why he was having issues all free practice too. And that didn't last long, I think, but it was towards the end. A lot of the drivers were, I guess, rushing to finish, and during an outlap, there was a lot of traffic, and Lando was trying to get through all the traffic, and I think he hit Lewis during one of his outlaps to get to the last to get to his session, which is the session that I think that got him to first place. So, but that was Friday. Like I said, first free practice wasn't as eventful. Second one, more action, but it was mostly just a lot of fines, lockups, not a lot of contact, I want to say.
Which brings us to...
And then Saturday.
We had two, I think, bigger crashes that happened there with Nico and with Logan, which we can touch on. And Nico got a reprimand because of he spun out and hit the wall, and then he had his front wing underneath his car when he was driving back to the pits, which resulted in little pieces of debris being left on the track. So he got a reprimand for that.
But this is why I was saying it was crazy, because he had issues for lockups in free practice 1, and then he had issues and a red flag in free practice 2, or I think it was a yellow flag, and then it turned gray. And then for him to have it on the third one, it's like, what did they actually figure out? Nothing. So luckily, it was just a reprimand and not like a fine. But again, it wouldn't have happened if they found the issue in the first 2 free practices.
And luckily nothing of the debris that fell out impacted anybody else's session. It's relatively small.
Yeah. The biggest news for free practice was Logan's crash, which honestly was surprising. I mean, yes, it's Logan and he does crash a lot, but he only crashed because he touched the grass.
Yeah. And it was such a quick, it wasn't like he went fully on the grass. It was literally part of his wheel.
Yeah, it was the last part of the corner, touched it, spun, hit the barrier. I mean, it was a bad crash. I'm not gonna lie, it was a bad crash. But for that small little thing to create such a big crash, and for the car to catch on fire,
and thankfully he's okay. And we had, I think, something that I'm remembering and seems to be a repeated pattern is George slowing down, stopping his car, making sure that Logan knows he needs to get out because there is a fire. Because Logan, I don't think, could see that his car was on fire.
No, because it was behind him.
And it just kind of reminds me of Joe's crash, where George hopped out and ran to him, which I think is so sweet.
Yeah, and you could hear everybody else's, not only George, but Ricardo, I think it was Lando or Oscar. No, it was Oscar. It was Oscar and Ricardo. They both the first thing they asked was if Logan was okay. They didn't ask, hey, what happened or anything like that. It was is he okay? That was it. I think that was really nice. Because a lot of people, I guess because I think he did get, I don't want to say burned, but I think it was hot enough for him to be oh no, I need to get out, because he jumped.
Yeah.
If we saw the video, you could see him jump, and I guess either he got burned or it was getting too warm or something, but he didn't talk about it, and I didn't see any interviews where he talked a lot about it. So
yeah, he seemed like he needed a minute to collect himself before he continued over the barrier and walked back. But you said, thankfully he's okay.
Yeah. Did you see that one fan that went and tried to take a picture with him?
Really?
Right after. Yes, he was walking back. Yes, he was walking back, and this guy just walks up to him and asks for a picture, and I guess he's caught off guard, and he takes the picture. But even the guy behind him, I guess, wanted a picture also. There was a fan, and he decided not to. You could see him turn around and not do it. Why would you ask for a picture right after that happened?
No. Even if you get out of the car, you're still in shock, probably. So, this.
Yeah. It was, I mean, I'm a fan and I would have loved to take a picture,
No,
but
like
not at the moment.
know the situation that's happening and like what's happening, and not like have a little bit of respect and understanding that he was just in a car crash and thankfully is okay.
But it was a big enough car crash for them to take 40 minutes to fix the barriers, which only left 2 minutes for everybody else in the session, which is crazy. I thought they would have extended the session or at least like stopped the time.
I honestly, I was surprised they didn't stop the time. Like maybe the first little bit, like just to see what damage was done and what they need to fix, fine. But once it hit like the 30 mark, I'm like, why is the clock still going? Should we not just stop it and like resume later on?
Yeah. I thought it was gonna like either stop the clock and be like, okay, we're gonna resume at this time. But no, it just kept going and then left them 2 minutes, which I guess because it was the last session, they were just like, whatever. But a lot of people like Carlos did not have time to actually practice. Like even during that 40 minutes, the DJ was going hard. Like he was trying to get people dancing, and for 40 minutes you would just see like videos of different people dancing to whatever song, and I thought that was was funny, but it was also very awkward.
At least they had a good DJ too, because that's a long time for fans to be sitting there not knowing when exactly it's gonna start.
Yeah, I will say the music was good. Like you could hear, you know how you can't really hear that much, but you could still hear what was saying, and I will say the music was good. So that was nice. I just thought it was funny because like you showed people dancing for 40 minutes. I don't understand. But during those like the last 2 minutes that they had, I guess everyone was in a rush to at least get one session in, and it felt like an actual race with everyone trying to get outside the pit lane.
Yeah, and Max, he just his whole I'm like, I have issues with him not getting the same treatment that like he didn't get a fine for crossing the right line, saving the pits. And I understand it's different when you're in qualifying or in a race versus when you're in practice. But I just feel like with all the reprimands and all the fines they were handing out for free practice 2, to not get the same treatment was just it. I mean, I'm not surprised. It was not surprising, but like I was a little disappointed about that.
Yeah, I'm not surprised either, but the fact that he didn't even get a reprimand was messed up. Like you could tell, like, I mean, everyone speculates that he gets different treatment from the FIA and the stewards, which yes, it's not a lie that you can tell, and this proves it. Like if it was any other driver, they would have gotten a reprimand or 100 euros or something, which again, it's nothing to them, but still it keeps them accountable for their actions, and because it is unsafe. Like the first time he did it makes sense because he had enough room and you're allowed to do that when he passed Piastri. But the second time when he was like wheel to wheel with Lewis, there's no room for the two to fit within that one white line. And I think because there was no camera or no view, because even the commentators were trying, like Sky Sports was trying to see like different angles to see if he did pass the white line. And you could tell he did, but I guess because they didn't have evidence, they didn't pass it on to the FIA.
And that is how all those practices went. Very entertaining, I think, at least the second and third practice, which brings us into Saturday qualifying, which a lot happened there too. We have different drivers. I like going back to the whole deduction of points. We have Lewis, who was 12th, I think. He qualified 12th, which was a shock to me because he did so well in free practice 1 and free practice 2 to be then 12th. And then he got a 3-race grid penalty, dropping him to 15th.
Yeah. Well, we got to go back because yes, it was shocking that he was 12th, first of all. But then it was also shocking that even Checo, which was the one that said that reported him basically for impeding. Right. And that was the whole reason why he got the 3 place grid penalty. But I feel like it's not. That's another, like, I don't know what was going on with that FIA like this weekend, because Hamilton had nowhere to go. Lewis had nowhere to go. He was going around the corner. Like he had to go to the racing line. And I guess it's his team's fault for not like telling him that Checo was like seconds away. So he could at least speed up and get around. But I think they should have at least fined Mercedes and still kept Lewis at 12 instead of giving him a 3-place grid penalty, which I get is the regulation that like it's the rule, they have to do that. But I just think it wasn't worth it enough for
no,
that
and
case.
I don't remember. I think it was one of the Haas's that Lewis had to get out of the way for them too. So it wasn't just a Lewis Checo thing. There was stuff happening before that resulted in Lewis being where he was at the time that I think impacted why Checo might have felt like he did and not having enough room.
Yeah. But I think I have a love-hate relationship with Checo because he is a good driver sometimes, but sometimes he like it was not the right reason for him to report him. It was also he was just mad because he had to use the second set of tires instead of having 2 for the last quali. He had 1, and he blames that on Lewis messing up his quali, which I don't know. I think it's just driver error or team error, but Lewis shouldn't have been awarded those 3 grid penalties. And then Logan, his car still wasn't even ready, which I was very surprised that the chassis was okay, because that was the one thing that said that was fine, which I was like, half of it was gone. What do you mean? It's like where and like I saw it, like the front half was gone. So where was it okay? They were like, oh, it was the engine and the gearbox that was messed up, which sure. But like they really expected him to be back for quali.
I was not expecting him at all. It was not a surprise.
It wasn't, but it was weird that like he didn't even show up, I guess. Like they didn't show him at all during the qualification. They just showed his car, which sure. Or maybe he was hurt and we just don't know, or maybe he was just like wanted to rest from the day before, which understandable. But like still shocking to me that they would be ready. It caught on fire. Like, come on. What was he gonna go with? Because there was the whole speculation on if they had a second chassis because of the like previous races and what happened with Alex. But come on, I don't know. It was just weird. At least Logan didn't get 20th or last place for quali because of what happened with Alex right after the qualifying, which it was discovered that he had a unregulated floor.
Yeah. And he was disqualified.
Yeah. Again, I get it. I mean, it happened to George last race, right?
And that resulted in like an actual race. That impacted an actual race outcome.
But this one's hard because supposedly Williams tested everything and they were in regulation. There was no issues. And then it turns out it was like 3 millimeters off and they just had to shorten it. But like, how do you do all the checks and then everything looks right, but then you're 3 millimeters off? like, I don't know. I know that like the penalty is a disqualification, which rightfully so during a race, right? But for a quali, I would have just given him a penalty, a grid penalty.
I mean, he's already he was already last. Like,
well, no, because he was up. He was 8th.
oh shoot,
Like he qualified 8th. He actually was doing really good.
I forgot about that.
He was doing really good. He qualified 8th, and then that whole thing happened right after the race, and he ended up being 20th.
Yeah.
But like I like I said, I would have given him maybe, because they've done it before, not with the floor regulations, but they've done it to where like, the grid penalty is like 20 spots or whatever you want to do. But for qualification, I mean, 20 was excessive. I was thinking of you, yeah, like 60, I think. No, but like, there's been races where they go down like 6, 7 spots. Like Daniel's done that before. Checo with the 3 grid penalty. Like, I just think the disqualification was way too much for a quali. If it was a race, totally understand disqualification. But for a quali, I think it should have been a grid penalty.
No, I agree.
Because he did and I don't think that was a result of the floor. Like, I don't think he did really good because of the result of the floor. I think he just knows how that track is, and he like knows what to do. It was like every session he was doing good. It wasn't that like that one time because of like, I don't know.
Agree. No, you do, and I agree. And I would have loved to see, since he's done so well, where he would have ended up if he were able to stay 8th, or if he did have, just some ended up down in the grid because of penalties, to see where he would have been at versus starting at 20th, because I think he would have done really well.
He would have been in the mid grid. I mean, he was 8th, so let's say he went down 4 or 5 at least. I think he still would have been in the mid grid, or he would have stayed in the 8th or whatever, around there, because he had the speed, and it wasn't because of the floor.
Which is the end of quali, and like a lot happened. It was very exciting. A lot happened the last few days, and that kind of just brings us to Sunday, which we have our race predictions for, and we posted them over our socials. So if you want to go see some of those sometime, check us out.
Which I will say, now that the race is over, we'll talk about the race. My predictions were pretty close.
They were really good. Really good. And I'm proud of myself for having faith in Lewis and Pierre, because I put both of them up.
Okay, here's the thing. With the predictions, I feel bad. You're proud of yourself, but I feel bad because I didn't put Lewis. But again, this because the track, I focused more on how the track isn't good for overtaking. And because of his grid position, I was like, there's no way he's going to be able to like pass everybody to get up to at least the top 10. So that was the only reason why I didn't.
And that's completely understandable.
And I felt bad.
It's a very valid reason. I will just always root for Lewis to be up there.
Yeah. So, but like Sarah said, you can see our predictions on our Instagram and TikTok and all that, because I'm not gonna go through all those. I think, but the one thing that we all agreed on, because we all put our own predictions, it wasn't like a group thing. We all had our own. The one thing we did agree on was driver of the day.
And Lando fans go really hard when it comes to driver of the day, and he deserved it. We'll talk about that.
This race he did. Yeah. We'll talk about it.
And that brings us to Sunday, which, as we're filming this, is today, in our race, which I thought was very exciting. I was very happy.
100%. Me too. Yeah, okay, but we
Yeah.
have to start from the beginning because we didn't talk about it. But in all the free practices and quali, Max was not doing great. And this was important for him because it was his home race. So I thought that was very interesting, and that was very telling that he was not going to do great during the
Yeah.
race. So I already knew he wasn't going to win, but somebody put him as his P1.
Well,
I wonder who that is.
I was expecting him to do just a little better because it's Max. I figured,
No, and I
yeah,
get it.
and with it,
It
yeah,
makes sense.
and with it being his home race, I figured he might be a little more aggressive, but I'm glad he was not. Like he drove fairly, I feel like. So I'm just glad nothing happened
Yeah.
because I was expecting a bit more from him.
Yeah. Even after, you know how they film the post quality interviews or whatever, he was saying how anything could happen in turn one and he's going to try everything possible. And I thought that means he's going to be aggressive. So, I mean, I'm glad he wasn't, but I do get why people think he still could have won because he does that a lot where like he won't do good in qualies or in practices, but it's like he's kind of faking it. At least in past races, it's like it looks like he's not gonna do good, and then all of a sudden he's like 15 seconds ahead or whatever. So I get why he could have been P1.
And I think the fact that like when the race first started, he got in front of Lando. He was first, and I think George got in front of Oscar. I think that was it. So,
but that was because McLaren was having a tire issue. Like the tires kept spinning, they wouldn't go, which they both said, which it's McLaren's fault. But
yeah. So I think that was a surprise because I honestly thought Max was going to continue, and then his race just kept getting worse and worse throughout the 72 laps, 75 laps.
Yeah. 72. Well, he started saying like very early on, I think around like lap 5 or 6, that he was having issues that his car wasn't turning. They were like, okay, we'll check. And the only thing they decided on was to box him and switch the tires.
Yeah.
Which went into Lando's favor. And that's when Lando was like, I'm out. I'm booking it. A bunch of free air. I'll take it. And he
did amazing. The whole race, like even when he pitted and was further behind, he was able to catch up, I think, fairly quickly. I don't know, there was a lot of movement for the first, I think, for the top 10. It kept moving throughout the race. And the top 5 was pretty consistent for a good portion of it. I mean, every now and then when someone pitted, it would change up, but it would always go back to maybe not them being in the same spots, but the drivers being the same within those top 5, I feel.
This is why I say my predictions are pretty spot on. I was texting you, I was like, I should be a strategist because they were spot on for a while until George pitted and messed everything up. But my order was good from like P1 to P7. My order was like spot on. Well, George pitted and it messed everything up. So
yeah, I mean, like going back to the predictions, my predictions were pretty. They weren't in the right order, like at all. But I had the people there, except the 2 drivers that I put up that did not even place in the top 10 were Aston Martin. I'm not sure why they just didn't do what I thought they would.
No, I had the same issue. I had the 2 Aston Martins and Yuki as my like bottom 3 in the top. And they did not place.
No, I had Yuki as my underdog, and he wasn't underdog material, unfortunately.
You know.
But I think one of my favorite parts. Like, of course, we have our winners. But I think Lewis, to go back to Lewis, just starting 15th. Watching him the whole race, he would kind of go between 12th and 8th, depending on pitting, to end up where he did, even just in the points, was amazing. And I'm so proud of him for being top 10.
Yeah. I think the one that was like most surprising, I don't know, there was a lot of people I was surprised about this whole race. It was hard to tell like who was going to be in the top 10, let alone like top 3 at one point. But I guess we can go into like because we did decide to choose like our own MVPs, if you call them. And I would say Pierre, even though like he was still in the bottom 10 or whatever, he did a lot of overtaking and a lot of defending from all different drivers. I think he was like
he did so
biggest
good.
shock of
he
the
did
day.
so well, and I'm so happy because normally you don't even see him in the top 10. Like
Exactly, that's
yeah. So I think he was a surprise for sure, which is why we put him as the shock of the day.
He is our shock of the day. Yeah, no, I mean, there was a lot of people could have been like the shock of the day, but the reason we did shock of the day was because like you said, he usually at the bottom or in midfield, like lower grid, from 15 to 20, not midfield, but like, so that's why he was very surprising.
I know, I agree. And then our driver of the day is voted the driver of the day overall, Lando, who is, I don't even think we even actually said it, our race winner. That was the race winner.
Yes, our race winner.
Number 2.
I mean, he was leading since, I don't know, lap 26 or whatever. I don't remember what. And I was like, okay, please nothing happen. I was like, no pitting, don't mess up the pits, anything. And the last couple laps, I was shaking and crying because I was like, he's gonna win this time.
Not even did he just win. His gap, 22.9 seconds. Insane. From Max. That is like, mind-blowing to me.
Yes, and even when he was in the cool-down room, I loved the conversation. Like, it was very quiet. It was a very quiet cool-down room this time, but I love the conversation between Max and Charles, because Charles was asking what was the gap, and he was like, it was like 22 seconds, and Charles's face was everything to me.
Yeah,
he's like complete shock, and it was the
so
best.
Funny, yeah. Ever. Which so I don't actually think we fully said it, but the top 3 were Lando, Max, Charles, which is great. I was so happy for Charles to get back on the podium after what feels like forever, and like finally have Monaco. Both Ferraris did pretty well this race, which shocking because no offense, but like Ferrari is always like up in the air. But I'm really happy for Charles.
To be honest, even Ferrari was shocked they were so high, because even Charles in Charles's post interview, he was saying how like he expected 6th, not 3rd. So
yeah,
they were calling him a miracle, which
that's
you say
a
that
strong word.
I don't remember who said it, but it was during the interview. They said it was a miracle, or he did a miracle, or whatever it was, and people ran with that, like on Twitter, Instagram, everything. So I thought those were really funny. If you go to TikTok or Twitter, you'll look them up. It's funny.
And that is, Charles is also voted our underdog which well deserved, I feel like.
Yes. And we didn't talk about this. And again, bear with us because, again, this is our first actual podcast describing what happened during a GP. But we are going to have, we're going to post our race winner, of course, but we're going to have our own driver of the day. Sometimes it might be different than the actual driver of the day. We're going to have a shock of the day because somebody's going to surprise us at some point, like Pierre did. We're also going to have the underdog. This is the one that like people don't expect, which again was Charles. So just you'll see that in the next coming races as well. So just be ready for that.
Something to look forward to. And I think one of the biggest mishaps just overall was not even specific drivers, just the Mercedes team and their pitting. That confused me.
It makes no sense. They pitted too early. First, for Lewis, they pitted him way too early. Then they put him on softs, which made no sense because then that meant he had to pit again, which I get they put him on softs to at least catch up and like overtake on the grid. But then that still meant he had to pit again and lose everything he just did, which did happen.
Yeah. He pitted 3 times.
So,
and even with George.
And then they also pitted, I was going to say, they also pitted George at the worst time. Because like I said, my top 10 was spot on. George was 3rd. Or no, 4th. I put him at 4th. George was 4th for a second. And I was trying to maneuver it so like the 3, 4, and 5 would be in the right order. But then George pitted and it ended up at like 8th or 9th and messed everything up.
I don't know. The whole strategy for them really was interesting to see. And I'm surprised with the strategy that they did, that they ended up within the points for both Mercedes, because I was not expecting that, to be honest, but very happy for Lewis.
Yeah, but they even interviewed Toto afterwards, and even Toto was surprised. He was like, I don't understand what happened. We're going to have to look at it. I don't know. It was weird. But I will add another mishap. Like, I don't think drivers in general did bad at all. I think everybody did either like normal or were outstanding or were shocking or were underdogs. Great. But I think the most mishaps were the teams, because yes, Mercedes is one of them, but I would also put Williams as the second one because of all the mishaps, the fines, the floor, the crash. Like, they had the worst weekend. And if you saw the videos from James, he was so like, I'm because we met him, we know what he's like, right? His expression was just like he was either in shock or I don't know, but like it was so sad to watch.
Yeah. So no, I agree. I think as an overall weekend, Williams did not have, this was not their weekend, and hopefully they can bounce back next weekend, but we'll see.
I don't know.
So another team that had, I think, just a not great week was Haas. And it started from like the beginning, where there was rumors of them not being able to leave to go to Monza just because of some unpaid fines. But we didn't know everything at the time. It wasn't 100% clear what was going on, just rumors that they were not able to leave. And then it came out after the race that there were some unpaid fines to their previous sponsor that they did end up paying. However, they still are not able to leave to go to Monza yet because they need stamps to say that they did pay those fines, and it's not open right now. So maybe on Monday, hopefully on Monday, the sooner it can get done, they can get those stamps and be on their way. But I think that was pretty big because that whole, it started with like speculation and we didn't know what was going on. So I think that was very interesting.
Yeah. Well, it started with them. It started with them saying like, Haas is not going to be at Monza next week. Like they didn't say why, and then everyone was like, okay, like someone not going to drive. Like what's going on? And then like as the weekend went on, they were saying how like it has to do with the previous sponsor, and I don't know. It was weird because even Jane was there, which he's never really is.
Yeah.
Now we know why. Because he met with Quartz in the Netherlands, which I thought was interesting that it happened there and not.
Yeah, I don't
anywhere
know
else.
why the sponsor filed in the Netherlands. I don't know. I don't think they said.
I guess if they like
Yeah.
money, like now. But I mean, it still gives them. It is bad. I get that, but it's not like. Hopefully they resolve it Monday, but it's not like they can't make it to the next race by Thursday, Friday, which I get they have to set up. But it's not as far.
Yeah, I think they'll be okay. Like as long as they don't stay past Monday, I think if they get moving and on the road, they'll be fine. So I think they should be getting there in no time, even if they do have to hurry up, setting up just a little bit. They'll be fine. They'll still be there for next weekend.
I mean, I guess the drivers and everybody could get there beforehand, and then it's the freight that they're waiting for. So the cars, the equipment, everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, as long as they like, I think if they leave by Tuesday, they'll be fine. It usually takes what, like 3 days, 2 days to get there. So
yeah,
they'll be fine. But like I said, it was a lot of teams messing up and not drivers.
Yeah. So I mean, I personally really enjoyed this weekend as it being the first one back from summer break. A lot happened and the race was very exciting. So I'm very happy with the outcome and just overall the weekend. I think it was great.
Yeah. And like I said, I was very surprised that there were a lot of overtakes. I thought it was going to be a race where like everyone was going to stay in the same line, like Monaco. But there were a lot of overtakes, and a lot of people were surprised about that. So that's what made it interesting.
No, I agree. I think it was a lot of fun. And, you know, some of the races this season have been fairly predictable and kind of just, you just know it's going to happen. Yeah. And I think it was great. Yeah.
Well, to be fair, I don't think they're as predictable anymore because Max hasn't won in like the last 8
Which I think is insane.
So,
like,
yeah, it's like it's silly season
100%. Like the beginning of this season, I was like, okay, here we go. We have another Max dominated season. I am mentally prepared at this point. Like, fine, sure. And as the races went on, we got different winners. Like it was still Max predominantly winning, but then like the later gone the seasons, the more races we had with different drivers winning, and I think that is so fun. And now we actually have a race between drivers, a little bit more distance in points, but you know, also teams. We have the constructors, and they are fighting for first place, which I think is going to be really, really fun and something to look forward to.
I'm going to be very honest. If McLaren, because they're only 30 points away from constructors, just constructors, if both of them place and Checo doesn't next, they're definitely going to go up, like at least either above. Let's say Max doesn't do great. Let's just say he gets like 10th or whatever, lowest points possible. This is like hypothetical. And then Checo doesn't even place, let's say. and both drivers get like top 5 again because they have the last like 5 races they've been top 5. That would make them first in the constructor.
That's no, it seriously like, and when has McLaren last been competitive enough to be in a position to be fighting for a first place constructors championship? Like, it's been so long.
And if it's not Monza, it's definitely going to be like the next race, like the next couple races. It's going to happen. I'm for sure. A lot of commentators were talking about how Checo did great this race, but is it enough to, I guess, get him to keep his seat? Because there's also speculation. We forgot about this. Helmut was saying over the weekend that Liam Lawson is definitely going to have a seat in RB, which I think is interesting because I don't think it would be RB. Well, yes, Liam Lawson would be RB, but I think they would still keep Daniel. And I don't think they'd keep him as a reserve driver. I think they would remove Checo and put Daniel next to Max. For sure. Which I find very interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. I mean, it's that whole scenario has been speculated for so long. And I honestly thought that was going to be the case. And I believe we touched on this in our summer break video. But I honestly thought that was going to happen. We were going to have that switch and it didn't. So I'm curious to see if that ever comes to.
Yeah. But like I said, it's just a rumor. But for him to say it now and not during summer break is interesting. That means they're still looking at the possibility of changing drivers. So we'll see.
And I think that kind of brings us to the end of this race week, which, again, very exciting for our first one back from summer break. And if you enjoyed this and would like to see more of us, make sure you check us out on any of our socials. We have Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. You can watch our podcasts on Spotify and YouTube at Eyes on the Grid.
Make sure to come back next week where we talk about the Monza Grand Prix. Until then, this is Eyes on the Grid. See you next time. Bye.
It's lights out and away we go.